Hello and welcome everyone to our live session as part of the Uni Guide series. My name is Zubair. I'll be your host for today. I'm the founder of ZNotes, and today we have a really important topic we're talking about. We have some amazing experts to help us on this. It's all about results day. So we know that next week, many of you who are doing Cambridge qualifications will be getting your results. You'll be finding out your A-level results, and this will play a big role in deciding your university choices. You've already done some insurance and confirmations in UCAS, but what does it mean when you get the results? What happens if you make the great choices? What happens if you don't? We're going to be talking about all these things, and of course, getting your questions involved as well. Today we have been presenting this webinar as part of our partnership with Better Uni Choices and One Education, and we have Jonathan representing Better Uni Choices, a website providing information and inspiration for students applying to universities in the UK. And we have Cam, who's a co-founder of One Education Consulting, which is based in Bangkok and helping students with a free service to apply to universities abroad. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about each one of you. Maybe Jonathan, you can kick us off with a bit of background about what you do and your experience in the higher ed world.
Cool. Thank you so much. Really lovely to be here. Hope I can be of help to you during the next hour or so. So I'm Jonathan, and I have worked in higher education universities for around about 30 years. So I've worked in student recruitment, in outreach, in admissions across a range of British universities, including Leicester University, Loughborough University, and my last substantive role in universities was at Imperial College as their director of recruitment and outreach. I've also worked in sort of education technology, working with the founders of Unibuddy to set up that as a business, and now essentially I write. So the idea is I write about higher education, sharing my insight with students, advisors, parents who are interested in finding out a little bit more from the inside what it's like to apply to universities. And that's really what Better Uni Choices is all about.
Thanks so much. I'm very excited to hear your experiences and perspective in this discussion. Over to you, Cameron.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cameron. I've been, again, in higher education or student recruitment or university admissions for the last 30 plus years. I started my career working in schools liaison, going around sixth forms in the UK, encouraging students to go to university. Then worked in international recruitment and headed several UK university international offices. About just over 20 years ago, I moved to Thailand, and I kind of swapped sides, if you like, and I set up a company that worked with students, helping them plan their kind of study abroad futures, navigate the admissions process. And I sold that company to the Washington Post Group. And then I have had some experience working in large commercial education companies. I stopped doing that because I prefer working with the students, and I co-founded another education consultancy in Bangkok, One Education. We offer a free service helping students, trying to help them go where they want to go and study.
Amazing, Cameron. We're excited to get your perspective as we go through this webinar as well. Just a reminder that those of us who are joining in live, we're going to have the expertise of both Jonathan and Cameron as we go through the session. We'll go through a couple slides, but then we'll also be looking forward to your questions. So do share it in the chat, and we'll bring them up, and we'll get the insights from these experts as well. So without further ado, Jonathan, I'll pass over to you, and we'd love to get on and hear a little bit more about how we can prepare for Results Day, which is coming up in just a week.
Great. So listen, I've got some slides, some PowerPoint slides. Nobody really likes PowerPoint slides, but they give a little bit of structure to what we're going to talk about over the next sort of 10 to 15 minutes. Cameron, Zubair, feel free to chat, to interrupt anything you think you can add on to some of the stuff that I'm saying. But hopefully this gives us a little bit of structure. And for those of you here watching, it'll give you a chance to have a think about the specific things that maybe you would like to ask. So without further ado, what are we going to cover? Well, we're going to start with a sort of brief overview of clearing and of Results Day. So what is clearing about, both from the university perspective and from your perspective, and then what really happens on A-level Results Day, what the timeline is and what you need to be careful of. As Zubair said, we're going to talk about what your options are, if you meet your offers, if you don't meet your offers. We're going to talk about how clearing works in practice for you, what you need to prepare, what you need to do if you find yourself in clearing. a little bit about what to do once your place is confirmed, and a few things about what you can do right now to prepare in advance clearing and results day. So what is clearing all about? Well, as you can see in front of you, it's about matching unplaced students with courses with vacancies. Well, what does that actually mean in practice? Well, universities, they're not commercial organizations, but like businesses, they set themselves targets, okay? And they decide in each course how many students they would like to admit so that they've got enough staff and, bluntly, enough resources to teach all of those students. And they've got targets at sort of course level, at faculty level, and at university level. And what happens over the summer is all the students that they've been making offers to is the students begin to get their results, whether it's A-levels or IB or BTEC, and gradually those places fill up. And A-levels are the most important of all the qualifications from the university perspective, because that's the qualifications that most of their intake are taking, and they're also the ones to come in last. So on A-level results day, universities will know how many of the students who accepted their offer have actually met the grades that they wanted. And so they may have filled 80%, 90% of their course places. And so the university has to decide, how do they fill the remaining courses? Do they offer that course in clearing that anyone can apply for? Or do they lower the entry grades and offer it to students who've already applied but perhaps haven't quite met the grades they looked for? Meanwhile, you've got thousands of students, some of whom have applied before and have got these conditional offers and didn't make the grades, and some of us who are new applicants. And we're trying to match all those students who haven't got a place with the places available. Now, if you've seen on UCAS, clearing technically opened on the 5th of July. And so you might think there's been lots of activity up since that. But actually, with clearing, you need to have had your grades before you can apply through clearing. So really, from your perspective as A-level applicants and from the university's perspective, it really all gets going on A-level results day. And that's next Thursday, the 14th of August. And I expect you've all got that day firmly in your diary. On that day, on 14th of August, listen, it's going to be different depending on which school you're at, which country you're located in. But broadly speaking, most schools are able to release grades from 8 a.m. UK time. So whatever time that is, wherever you are. Now, some schools will have a portal that you can log into from wherever you are and you can see your grades. Others will have a brown envelope that you can pick up in the school on the day. But 8 a.m. UK time is typically when you'll be able to have your results. Now, some of you, if you're the international, I think it's International Cambridge Board, may have had some of your results on Tuesday. So you'll have some of your results in place already. Now, UCAS Track, that's you log into the UCAS Hub and you log into UCAS Track to see your decisions and what's happened with them. That will start updating also from 8 a.m. UK time. Now, the universities actually get your grades a little bit early. They will get your grades today or tomorrow. So they have a full week to make those decisions. So in most cases, most of you will log into UCAS Track and you will know at 8 a.m. on Thursday whether you've got your place. Now, you might know your place and not your results, or you might get your results first and then your place, but it's all going to happen fairly quickly. More or less the same time, universities are going to open their phone lines and open their WhatsApp message groups for clearing, and you'll be able to contact them if you find you've got a question or you find you're on clearing and you're looking for places. They will start taking those calls at around 8 a.m. as well, but different universities will set their own times. But you cannot add a clearing application formally through UCAS until 1 p.m. in the afternoon UK time. And that's really to prevent students suddenly rushing into something that they might regret. So it gives a few hours between finding a results and actually then making a formal clearing application. So we look at your options, and essentially, there are two scenarios, aren't there, with your A-level results. You're going to get them through and you're going to be happy because you've got the grades that the university that you wanted to go to was asking for. So that conditional offer that you firmly accepted, if you meet it, you are in. Okay, the university doesn't get any choice about that. They've already made the offer. They've already decided they want you, and if you get the grades they're asked for, then you get your chosen course. So it's nice and straightforward. You can celebrate, you can go and relax for a little bit because your plans have worked. Okay, you've got your chosen course. Now, there may be some of you who got that chosen course, but actually you're now thinking, well, maybe I did better than I expected, or maybe I've had some second thoughts along the way over summer, and maybe I want to do a different course. Well, if that different course is at the same university, just give them a call, okay, on their clearing hotline number. Call them, see whether they've got a vacancy. You don't need to go formally through UCAS to do this. The university themselves can simply switch your offer if they're able to offer you a place. If, on the other hand, you want a different university, then have a think, have a look, go through the process that we're going to talk about in clearing and find that alternative offer, and then you can decline your place that you've got. But whatever you do, don't do it the other way around. Don't decline your place until you know you've got something that you're really keen to go to. So those are your options if you've met your offer. But what happens if you haven't met your offer? Well, I mentioned that universities might actually lower their entry grades a little bit. So you might still get your firm choice. Interestingly, there's a BBC article this morning with the CEO of UCAS who's saying that she believes that more students are going to get their firm choices on slightly lower offer grades than normal. She thinks thousands and thousands of students are going to get in on slightly lower grades than perhaps they expected. And that's really because of uncertainty around people like yourselves, international students, whether they're going to come to the university, whether they're going to come to the UK, whether they're going to go elsewhere. So actually, this year is a really good year to be an applicant. It's quite likely that the universities really want you, even if you have missed your grades. Now, the other thing they can do, if you've missed your grades by 2, 3, 4 grades, and really they're not able to offer you a place on the course you chose, they may be able to offer you a place on an alternative course. So you've applied to economics. Loads of people want to do economics, okay? But they can't offer you a place on that because their places are full. Maybe they'll offer you a place on business studies, management and economics, okay? If that happens, that's your choice then to decide whether or not you want to accept that. And if you don't, that's absolutely fine, but it may be a nice offer, maybe a good opportunity to go to the university that you wanted, but for a different course. They could offer you a foundation year. So maybe you've applied to engineering, you haven't done quite strongly enough in your physics and your maths, so they can offer you an extra foundation year where you do one more year and then you join the course. So again, your choice whether you want to accept that alternative offer. Of course, you have an insurance offer. That was your second choice, your backup, okay, which was there in case things didn't quite go as you'd hoped. Well, they may well accept you, okay? Probably your insurance choice was slightly lower grades, so there's a good chance that you'll get accepted there. If none of those things happen, then you are in clearing, and your opportunity now is to look at all those courses that are available in clearing and try and find yourself a place that you want to go to. So how does clearing work in practice? Well, the first thing I would say is really take a deep breath. Okay, if you find yourself in clearing and you weren't expecting it, then it can be quite an emotional moment. Okay, and you don't want to be taking lots of really important decisions while you're feeling a little bit sore, a little bit disappointed. So take a deep breath, go for a walk, go and speak to your friends, go and speak to your family, and we'll come back to this in a minute. And then start the process and trust the process because it's worked for thousands and thousands of students before. So the process really is that you search what is available on UCAS. Now, complexity added here is that they will potentially have different places available for international students from home students. And if you're an international student, generally this is in your interests, that universities will often advertise more places for international students, even if they're full for home students. So there'll be a selection, a filter set that you want to look at international students if that's for you. List out some options and then prioritize these. So really, if these are courses that you haven't considered before, do a little bit of research. If they're universities and courses that you're familiar with because you've applied before or you've already looked at them, it's fine. Just list out 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 choices in priority order. And then you have to make the call. Now, most universities will advertise clearing hotlines on their websites, and the fastest way, the easiest way to sort this out literally is to pick up the phone. And I know this is intimidating. Lots of universities will produce videos that will show you exactly what happens. You're going to speak to somebody either in admissions, so they might be somebody in the admissions office who can make a decision right there and then. It could be that they've got a call center with temporary staff, possibly even students, who will take your details. They may be able to make a decision. They may not. They may then pass you through to somebody else who will make a decision and make the offer. And very often that could be somebody within the department. It could be an academic, a teacher on the course that you're going to study. Every university operates slightly differently. But you're going to be put through to somebody who's going to have a computer in front of them, who's going to take your details. So you want to be prepared. Have in front of you all of the grades that you've got, your A-levels, your GCSEs, your English language qualifications. Have that written in front of you so you don't have that sort of brain freeze that we all get when we're under a little bit of pressure. If you have a clearing number available to you, because you're in clearing on UCAS, write that down and have that with you. And of course, have any other questions you might have, whether you have questions about accommodation, the campus, or perhaps tuition fees. Any questions that you might have them noted so that, when you get to the end of the call, you haven't forgotten the things that were important to you. But ultimately, the purpose of this is to try and get the university to offer you a place. And if they do, don't get overexcited straight away. Don't just go, yes, brilliant, I'll accept it. Ask for confirmation of that offer. They will normally send you an email, and in that email, it should confirm what basis they've made the offer, what course, and whether there is a deadline to accept it. And this is really critical. Some universities won't set a deadline, they're just happy to offer it. Others will be saying, you need to accept this within 24 or 48 hours. So make sure you know what that is. And try to get maybe 2 or 3 offers before you make your decision. Check the course thoroughly, of course. If you can talk to an academic on the course, then that's great. If you've got any questions, you can use Unibuddy is a thing that most universities have in the bottom right-hand corner of their website. It'll say chat to a student. You can go onto that, find a student on the course that you're thinking of studying and talk to them. Check the course content closely and potentially even go to visit if you're in the country. And as a little aside, I worked for Leicester University for 5 years, and my favorite day, this is going to sound a bit weird, but my favorite day each year was open day, 2 days after clearing and results day. So on the Saturday, we had this big open day, which was for anybody who was thinking about accepting a place through clearing and anybody who had accepted it. And we would always have 250, 300 students there who'd all had a stressful time. They'd all been disappointed to miss out on something that they thought was the thing that they really wanted to go to. And they pitched up at Leicester and they were all, almost without exception, like, oh, this is nice. Why didn't I think of this before? Why didn't I consider this university? And they went away at the end of the day thinking, great, I now know where I am. So if you can go and visit the university, then absolutely do. And once you're sure you've made that final decision, and it's a good decision, then you go into UCAS, you go into UCAS Hub, you find that course, and you apply for it through clearing. Click the button and submit. Okay. What will happen at the other end is the university will see that application, they'll go and pull it out, they'll link it up with the conversation that they've had with you, and they will then make you a student. Okay. Now, just a couple more things which we'll go through relatively quickly because we've got lots of time to discuss your specific scenarios. But sometimes you might find you go onto UCAS first thing on Thursday morning and there isn't a decision. Now, there can be all sorts of legitimate reasons for this, and sometimes the university is just being a little bit slow. Feel free to ring them up and ask them for a deadline on when they're going to be making that decision, or find out if there's something missing and there's a reason why they haven't made the decision. Another possibility is perhaps you might be slightly disappointed with your results and you decided to appeal your grades. The first thing is to contact your school and find out the process, the timescale for appealing, and then you let the university know. So most universities will accept grade appeals, but there will be a deadline for that, and they will want to know the result of that appeal normally by the end of August. So speak to the university and let them know that you're appealing. Perhaps you want to defer your place, so you've confirmed your place, but actually you want to take a year out and do something else. call the university. Normally, they're very, very happy to do that. And I guess the final thing is, if you're thinking of doing retakes or perhaps not going, take time to decide. Don't decline your place or pull out of it straight away. Make sure that this is absolutely what you want to do. Speak to all your friends, advisors, family, and take the time to decide. Okay, so once your place is confirmed, it's the practical stuff you want to sort out. And I've just got a handful of things that I think are really important at that stage. Sort out your accommodation. If it's a new university that you're going to and you weren't going to be going there before, this can be very urgent and something you want to do straight away. If you're a UK student and you've changed university, you'll need to update the details for your student finance arrangements. That's very straightforward. You can do it online, but again, it's quite important. Thirdly, watch out for emails from universities. They may have deadlines for filling in registration information, filling in accommodation information. So check your spam. This is the one time of the year where you really don't want to miss an email. And finally, join any online communities you're invited to. Many universities will set up a WhatsApp group for the first year class. They might set up Facebook groups. Again, Unibuddy that I've mentioned, they have a little community app that many universities use. And that just gives you the chance to join a community and ask questions, find out how everybody else is getting on, and hopefully make some friends before you arrive. So we'll finish off with a kind of little, what can you do now? First off, you've done the right thing by coming here, whether you're here live or whether you're watching the video. That's a great starting point in terms of making a plan. So what can that plan look like? Well, lots of universities have a sort of sign up for clearing in advance. Now, I wouldn't be doing this with 10 plus universities. They'll batter you with loads of emails that perhaps you don't want, but maybe 2 or 3. If you think you've got 2 or 3 choices that are what you've got in mind as your fallback, then why not sign up? They'll send you some useful information. They'll send you some useful videos that you can link into, and some will even make you a preliminary clearing offer in advance. Others might give you preferred access to the phone line, so they'll give you a specific phone line. They'll enable you to jump the queue on results day. So it's worth doing that perhaps with 2 or 3 choices. And I think my biggest piece of advice is to work out where you will be on results day. Are you at home? Are you going to be at school? Where are your parents going to be? Where are your school teachers and advisors going to be? So that when things start to happen and things start to get real, you're prepared and you know who you can go for help with. And I put a third bullet point here, which is inspired by something that Cameron said, which is, how might AI be able to help? Because actually, if you're sitting there on your own, it can be pretty useful to have a conversation with AI just to see what your options are. And I wonder, Cameron, whether I might jump to you. Cameron is both a parent and one of the most extensive users of AI that I know. And perhaps you might want to give a little bit kind of wisdom from your perspective about being a parent and using AI as well.
Yeah, no, sure. So before I pick up on those 2 points, I made a note of something you said earlier. I just wanted to jump in on. You mentioned that calling into a university during clearing can be intimidating, and I fully agree with that and understand. I think it's important to say, having worked on the other end of those calls, we are very happy to speak with you. Universities are generally very happy to speak with you, and they're also really trying to help. What I'm about to say might sound odd. They are dealing with hundreds of places on hundreds of courses usually. So if you're worried that what you're going to say, I want to defer my course, I don't want to accept it, they're not going to take that in a personal way. That's what a small number in a big plan, but they will treat you as an individual. They'll have your interests at heart. So it is intimidating. I used to hate it, but having been on the other end of those calls, I think it's important to remember the university are there. They're expecting you to call. They're happy to talk to you, and they are actually trying to help. So in terms of the other couple of points that I thought were interesting when I talked this through with Jonathan, one, kind of parents, and I was thinking back to, it's a long time, but I was thinking back to when I got my results. It was a long time. They came in the mail when I got them, but opened them up, and how I didn't quite get what I wanted. How were my parents going to react to that? And I think, thankfully, my parents were great, but obviously parents will have your best interests at heart. So I think there's 3 bits of advice I've got. One, if things don't quite go to plan, you might want to think about how you manage that situation. So instead of just saying, I didn't get in, maybe say, okay, I didn't get the grades I need, but I've been looking around, I've been planning for this, and here's what I'm going to do. So as a parent, I think, one of my biggest fears is that my son will kind of be stuck. He won't know what to do, and I'll have to jump in and help him, whatever. So the more you've got a plan, the more you can show them that you've thought about this and you've taken action, the more reassuring that is for them, I think. So again, just maybe in your mind run through, what happens if you get the grades. Great, celebrate with mum and dad. That's fantastic. But if not, just think about how you might communicate that in a way that reassures them. But also remember, they're your results. You took the exams. They're your results. And although your parents are going to be anxious or disappointed, perhaps, it's okay to ask for a little bit of space, a little bit of time to process how you feel, to think about what you're going to do. And this is where what Jonathan talked about, having a plan, really kicks in before you kind of react to their questions or their reactions. So that's, as a dad, that's how I would that's the advice I'd give my son, and hopefully that's useful. I was also thinking about how I would, what would I do in AI? Obviously, didn't have that when I was going through this process. I do use AI a lot. I use it to help me make decisions. So it won't make decisions for me. I don't use it in a kind of transactional way, but I do think it helps me make better decisions. So the kind of things that I might do is I might prompt it to help me with some planning scenarios. So, I'm expecting this, I'm confident or I'm not confident. Help me map out my worst case, my best case, or my most likely scenarios if I don't get my firm or my insurance choice. Just so you've thought about some of the issues before you're jumping onto phone calls or searching through different websites looking for options. I think also, it can help guide decision-making frameworks. What's most important here? What should I be focusing on? And going back to those intimidating calls or email communications, it can help you with kind of clear language for clear questions to ask, a checklist of questions to ask. If you have to draft emails to confirm things, because another thing I'd say to add to Jonathan's tips is I wouldn't rely on something I was told on the phone. I would try and get something in writing. I'd be much more confident I've got something in writing from the university. So again, I would say follow up with an email to try and confirm things. It can be a bit chaotic. That email might not be answered straight away, but it's good practice. So it can help you in terms of drafting checklists, questions. It can help you with decision-making frameworks, planning scenarios. And finally, I use it to search and summarize stuff based on my filters. So I've got these results. I'm interested in these kind of programs. I like these cities. Please find me courses in this subject that's available in clearing. I would double check those, but as a starting point, that might save you some time. So I would definitely encourage you to use the tools that are available. But remember, they're tools. Don't let them make decisions for you.
Thanks, Cameron. That was super insightful, and Jonathan for that really wonderful presentation. Are we okay to jump into Q&A from there on?
Yes, I think so. That'd be great.
Sure. Fantastic. We've had a couple of questions come in on the chat as well, which I'll prioritize and bring into first. I know there are now a handful of you listening in live as well, so please do send in any queries and questions that you may have thought about as the presentation has gone on. I'll start with the first question, which is actually about IB, and I know the IB results come even a little earlier. Jonathan, any insights on how you dealt with IB candidates?
So if you're taking IB, as you said, you'll have had your results 2-3 weeks ago, I think. Some of you will then have already had the confirmation from the universities. So if you meet your results, the grades that you were asked for, well, you'll already be ahead of the game. You've already got that confirmation. What does happen, and it can be really stressful and really difficult for IB students, is if you're slightly short on the results. Is some universities will then hold that decision and they will wait until A-level results day because they want to see how all the results over the full year group are coming in. And so there's that really tense, not particularly helpful 2 or 3 week period where you're waiting on results. Now, if that's the situation you're in, then kind of be reassured you're in no different situation from the A-level students. Actually, you're just waiting to see if you're going to be confirmed. And the universities will typically do those confirmations. If they haven't already, they will make those confirmations by A-level results day. So you will know. And from that point on, from that Thursday morning on, you're in exactly the same boat as they are. Except perhaps you've got a slight advantage because you've got an insight into what your results are and potentially whether you might need to be looking seriously at clearing. So from Thursday morning on, it's exactly the same. You'll either meet your grades, you won't meet your grades, and your options are exactly the same. And just again, be reassured. We often get asked questions: do the universities prefer A levels to IB? It's like, well, no. The universities want good students from whichever system and qualifications they come. And so they will do their level best not to make it easier or more difficult for either group.
Thanks, Jonathan. That's reassuring, I hope. Another question was around what kind of results are technically acceptable by major universities on UCAS? And I'll break that into two levels. One is that at application stage, but now also when you're coming to clearing potentially, and maybe you haven't made your first choice, you still are looking for a competitive university. What set of grades are they looking for, let's say, Russell Group universities?
Do you want to say that, Cam, or shall I? What do you think?
Sure, no, fine. So I think, obviously, in terms of what kind of results are technically acceptable, every program will have slightly different entry requirements. So even it's hard to give specifics in this case. To say if you're looking at a top 10 university or a Russell Group university, you're going to need a minimum of this, because it will depend on courses. Also, some universities have different approaches to the offers they make. You know, there are some universities that make lower offers on really competitive courses to students with strong predicted grades to take the pressure off them at this time of year. So you have to really look at sites, and this is the sort of thing you can do in the week now before your results, if you're worried, to do some research, because it's hard to say, okay, to get to this university you're going to need a minimum of this. Clearly, the higher your grades, the more choice you will have in most cases. I think the point that Jonathan made earlier about the IB issue is really important as well. It really depends on what other people have got as well. So, at this time of year, when we're talking to students, we focus very much on clearing. But certainly in the old days, this period used to be known as confirmation and clearing. So the universities will get your results, before you, as Jonathan said, today, tomorrow, I think. I can't remember the exact date. And they will be going through their list, seeing what their position is. If you remember, Jonathan started by saying they're not businesses, but they do have targets to manage the resources, the teachers, the professors. So they will be sitting there going through applications, checking off results and seeing where they stand. And if results are higher than usual, you're going to need a higher result to get in to the similar course. If, as Jonathan hinted before with the article in the BBC this morning, if perhaps results are going to be a little bit lower this year, maybe the grades this year will be different from those last year. So it's a moving target, but hopefully that helps. I think when you do speak to people in making calls, talk about your strengths, talk about anything you've got to offer. So, if you're borderline, there's no harm in saying, I got an A in my IGCSE in this subject, or there's other strengths that you can bring in. I did an internship, or whatever you've done. My project was in this area. Sell yourself a little bit is something I would say, because it's an interesting time of year.
Absolutely. It takes me back a couple of years now, but actually I didn't meet my grade requirements either, and I was sitting in hold for a couple of days. Similarly, for the A-level results to come out and be a confirmation. So for context, I'd applied for mathematics, and I'd applied to UCL. My offer was an A star, A star, A. I'd already achieved one of the A stars, and I had to get one A star and one A. I ended up getting 2 A stars and an A, but my A star wasn't in the required subject, which was further math. So it took a bit of time to bring people up. It was kind of a weird moment, because you felt like good that you achieved a result that you were looking forward to, but also a little bit daunting, because where you wanted to be, you ended up not meeting that result. So I was in that similar headspace of what Jonathan you're sharing, which is like that stressful moment. Am I getting there? Am I not getting there? Am I going to have to change my decision? And my backup offer actually was not even in London. It was 400 kilometers up in Durham. So it was a very stressful moment. But I think what we've discussed throughout today is universities are looking for the best possible scenario for themselves and for you, and they do need some time. You need to be very well prepared for any scenario, and things do happen. But at the end of the day, if you take a calm and collected decision, the best option will still be present, whether it's because you got your grades that you wanted, because you didn't get the grades you wanted, or anything in between. So that experience always is scary when I think back, but also reassuring that I ended up where I wanted to and did what I wanted to do. I was confirmed. I ended up staying for a master's level in my course, and it all went really well.
Out of interest, Hubert, how did you? What happened to get? Obviously, you got it. You made it. Did you jump on the phone? Did you talk to people?
I did. Yeah. So as soon as I saw the results, and I was on, similarly as Jonathan said, it was a hold, and I had to jump on a call and say, I've received this. I had to do further math alone. I didn't have a teacher, and this was a scenario I was in. They're like, okay, we understand. We also understand that the Cambridge curriculum for further math is even more difficult than the national curriculum or the local A levels. So they said, please give us some time. We're waiting for the local A level results to come out before we can make a decision. But I think that doesn't change the fact that it's a daunting period of time when you're not sure where you're going. But it was important to pick up the phone, have a conversation, be very, very articulate about where you are, what you did, how you achieved it, how you maybe overshot some of the targets that they'd already set for you, and pray for the best. But I had my family around. I made sure I was home for that period of time. My parents were very aware of what's happening and where the decisions were going to go. So those were really, really important things and factors that we've already discussed, but played a big role in my personal experiences as well with UCAS. Yeah.
Jonathan, I know your presentation covered this, but I kind of noted down 3 fictitious scenarios to try and bring some life to this. What about if I throw kind of 3 questions at you, 3 fictitious students, and see what advice we would give to those people? So the first one is a student was predicted BBB. They applied to realistic choices, but they ended up with AAB. So they did better than they expected. Now they're wondering, should I call higher ranked universities? Is it too late to upgrade, so to speak? What advice would you give to that candidate?
So I guess there are 2 things. One is, yes, you can. Okay. Well, the summary is, yes, you can, but should you? Okay. So those are the 2 questions you want to answer. Yeah. So you can. And universities who might be higher on the league table, or you perceive to be universities that might be more prestigious, or perhaps universities that are going to suit you better, that you considered first time round but ruled out. Yeah. They may well have offers, and they will advertise those on the website, both UCAS website and their own website. They will typically give a grained boundary that they're looking at, and so you'll have a good sense as to whether your grades are going to be suitable for them. And I do think there are going to be more places like that than ever before. There were some really prestigious universities in London who offered 1,000 places in clearing last year, or recruited 1,000 more students, certainly. Yeah. Second question is whether you should. So, you've spent 9 months going through the process of UCAS, making what you think was a really good decision, getting to know that university, potentially visiting on a visit day or an open day, potentially talking to their students already, getting to know the course, possibly even applying for accommodation and getting that secured. So do you really want to give up what might have been a really solid, good decision for something that just might be on a whim, potentially? Yeah. So I think those are the 2 things to consider. You can, but should you? And those things I can't answer for you, obviously. But those are the things you have to sort of to take seriously and reflect on as a student.
Yeah, look, I completely agree. I think, hopefully there's a reason you had the first choice as your firm choice. Hopefully that was a good fit for you, and you should think carefully about giving it away. Second scenario, a little sadder, this one, I'm afraid. Predicted AAB, firm offer was ABB, actually got ABC. Bit panicked. What should they do? Is it worth getting on the phone to their first choice, their firm choice, or should they go straight to insurance?
So I think If they've been declined by their firm choice, the reality is, and this is a harsh reality, is ringing them up to try to persuade them to take you is not really likely to happen unless there is information that they are not aware of. And you were talking, Zubair, weren't you, about I did some other things. I actually overachieved on this, and so maybe that could make the difference. So if there's something that they're not aware of, that there were some circumstances that happened to you, or that you did more of X than Y, then possibly. But on the whole, universities are not likely. Now, I say not likely because every year I hear a story about a student who did exactly that and got in. So while I can tell you it's not likely, I'm not ever going to tell a student don't try it, because it does happen that students get offers under those circumstances. Otherwise, I mean, if you're that close, your insurance offer is probably quite likely to come through. You can, of course, talk to the university about whether there are other courses available.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I talked in the presentation about them making alternative course offers.
Yeah.
Well,
Jonathan just drops off, but maybe Cam, you can continue on from the point.
So yeah, obviously there may be alternative courses with different entry requirements or more places available in clearing. Again, if a university has formally declined you, I'm not going to say your chances are high, but I wouldn't say it's not worth a call. Okay, yeah. Certainly with your insurance choice, hopefully you've made it. Again, if you're close, talk to them and see. So I think that's fine. Zubair, you made the point, and Jonathan picked up on it, about different qualifications overachieving in different places, new information, so to speak. Again, if you are going to call them, get it straight in your head what you're going to say. You know, this is the reason I think you should consider me, because I did this, or I did this, or this happened. And again, you know, be able to back that up with evidence. Should you be requested? Should it be requested?
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree.
Welcome back, Jonathan. So let's move on to the. That's all right. Let's move on to the third scenario, Cameron. Because
the third scenario. This one's slightly different approach. This student planned to study law, but did not meet the offer. However, they've seen an exciting vacancy for criminology with a placement year at the same university. Now feels a bit unsure. Should I stick to other law options, or in clearing, or should I kind of take a bold step and do a subject that I hadn't really thought about, but now looks attractive to me? So the kind of the other course scenario.
It's very similar, isn't it, to the first question? In terms of, it's like, you can, but should you?
Yeah.
Again, that's a question that I think, no one can really answer for somebody else. But what I would say, in that particular scenario, you can certainly pursue a career in law, having done something else. And in fact, that's becoming increasingly normal. So you're not going to shut off your options to study law, or to become a lawyer without studying it. I would think in those scenarios, there's something called Springboard, which you can access from UCAS, or you can access direct on the internet. And it's got lectures and short courses about loads of different subjects. So at the very least, go on, have a look at a 30-minute lecture on criminology, get a sense of what it might actually be like to study that subject, as opposed to the one that you were thinking about. And then you might get a sense of really like, well, actually, is this the right thing? And of course, it depends on how good was your decision to study law in the first place? How good was your research? Are you really properly bought into this? Or was that a decision that maybe you hadn't put enough thought into? And I can tell you that was my particular position. So when I applied to university, I did apply to law. And if I reflect back now, it wasn't a very well-made decision, if I'm honest. I don't have any regrets about life and where I studied and all those sorts of things, because it got me to where I am now. But if I'm honest with myself, my decision as a 17-year-old to go off and study law was not one that was particularly brilliantly made. And therefore, actually thinking about changing that to doing criminology would have been a perfectly legitimate and sensible idea.
I shouldn't tell you this, but my sister filled in my university applications for me. I ended up going to study development studies, which I thought was going to be a bit more geography, but actually turned out to be economics. Really enjoyed it, had a great time, and ended up here.
It's always interesting, these paths, and maybe one kind of a remark to make is that you always overthink these decisions. They do make a big role in your life, but at the same time, the university you go to, it has the factors of who did you end up extending the line to get your bank card from, or where did you end up getting an accommodation, or what city were you in, and what friends or societies did you make. And it does make a huge difference. So I would always encourage, even when I reflect back, I think I can't imagine a better place to be, but it was not my it may not have happened in that way. And if I went to a different location city, I'd probably have had a different set of experiences, which would have made feel like complete sense to me as well. I wanted to just pick up on this point around this different or switching into a degree. One of my closest friends was dead set on being a medic, and as an international student applying for medicine, you both know it's incredibly competitive, very low positions available in any university in the UK. Unfortunately, he was a high achiever, received top results, 2 A stars in name at the end of his A levels, but was unable to meet any medicine requirements because, of course, there was BMAT and UKCAT involved as well. So before even getting to clearing, he'd actually had no offers for medicine, and that's when he went back and thought again, and it's like, okay, what would I want to do? Would I want to go to another city or country? I want to still go to the UK. And he reflected and actually ended up choosing to study engineering. And he applied to UCL for electrical engineering, which is also an incredibly competitive course. He got his offer, he made the offer, and he ended up studying in the same university as me, and we were dorm mates as well. So just the reality that actually these courses and some courses do have very limited spaces. So be very thoughtful about what matters the most. For him, it was an experience in the UK and studying at an institution that he knew would set him up very well for life. And he ended up doing that. He's now thriving in his life as well. And he's not become a doctor, but he's become something that is, equally important and impactful in his life. Just a side or tangential story that I also wanted to include. It's always really fun to think back to those human stories. We do have a couple questions coming in the chat, so I'm going to pick up one of them. Does a gap year affect admissions? Maybe Jonathan, I'll pass to you first.
So, I mean, yes, it does. There are different options with the gap year, of course. So you can decide that you're going to apply in the normal cycle for deferred entry. So you fill in an application, say, well, I'm going to take a gap year. And as I mentioned, almost all universities are quite happy with this. There are some exceptions. So Oxford for maths, they're a little reluctant for people to take gap years because your maths knowledge and can deplete over time if you're not really keeping up with it. But most courses, it's fine. You can apply for deferred entry and then take a gap year. The other scenario is that you've applied, you get your results, and then you decide you want to take a gap year. Well, that's again what I mentioned in the presentation. Call them up, speak to them. They'll normally want to know, what are you going to do during the gap year? Does that sound sensible? If so, yes, no problem. And they'll simply defer your admission to next year and you don't need to reapply. The other thing that can happen is you've got your offers, or maybe you didn't even apply, and you decide to take a gap year and do something completely different and apply with your grades in hand. That's what we would say. So you're now in the situation where you're applying next year, but you've got your grades and you're going to be off on your gap year. Now, again, that's absolutely fine. In some respects, you now have an advantage because you have your grades, whereas everybody else applying doesn't have them yet. And so it's very clear for the university whether they're going to make you an offer. The difficulty, if there is one, is sometimes getting that support for your application. Most schools, most international schools will be happy to support your application, even though you've left the year before. Just speak to your school advisor, okay? I know this very closely because my wife is an advisor in an international school, and provided the students come in and give her plenty of notice, she will give them all the same support as she would her regular year 13 students. What she's not so enamored by is when these things come in last minute. And it's like, oh, suddenly, Mrs. Tinnicker, I need a reference, and I need it the day after tomorrow. So go back to your school, keep getting the support from them. And as I say, in some respects, you've got an advantage now. You've got your A levels, and it's just that you're on your gap year at this point.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Jonathan. There's another question. Maybe, Cameron, this would be very well set up for you, actually. So it's all about asking whether it's worth reaching out to a consultancy firm, and in this case, I'm thinking of a counseling agency instead of applying privately. I can just maybe build it up and I'll pass to you, Cameron. Is that
Sure.
It's really, really valuable to have really insightful and experienced support when it comes to applying to university. I was lucky enough to have a school counselor, but even then, I know that there were places and spaces where I would have benefited a lot from everything from visa applications to financing and thinking about different details that sometimes gets missed out along the way. So I think personally, and within ZNotes, we advocate for seeking out support from experienced and experts. That's why we've spent a lot of time in the organization actually identifying great counseling supporters, always offering free counseling services, and always making sure that the priority is the learner, making sure that they're given the highest support for the best possible outcome for them. But I'll pass to you, Cameron, because I know that you do this day in, day out in One Education as well.
So full disclosure, One Education is a consultancy firm. What I say may be biased. So seriously though, yes, certainly there's a lot of support that you can get from teachers, from family, from friends, and also from private firms that do this for a living, if you like. So there may be concerns. You may have concern: are they working in my best interest or their own best interest? I think you'll find that most good agents are working in your best interest, and they're there to help you. The UK universities and government got together and published something called the Agent Quality Framework, and you should find or should be able to find reference to that on most firms' websites. That's a relatively new thing, but it is going up on people's websites. And do they adhere to that code? The British Council also run education agent or education consultant training. Check with anyone you're talking to: have they passed the relevant training? Is that do they know what they're doing? The advantages, I would say, is companies like mine, we do this all the time, so we do know the process kind of in and out. And we also have personal relationships with people at most of the universities we work with. We're official representatives of our partner universities, and therefore we can normally pick up the phone and talk to someone we know on your behalf, as opposed to ringing a clearing hotline. We can normally, work behind the scenes a little bit to explain your case, some of that new information perhaps we talked about, and kind of advocate for you, if you like. But certainly, if you're going to do that, reach out to several firms. There's lots of firms doing this, lots of companies. Ask them some questions about: are they qualified to do this? Do they charge fees? Who are they working with? Are they official representatives? All of those questions. Do your due diligence, certainly. But I do think there are advantages in what can be a time-sensitive, pressured situation. Having somebody else who has gone through the process with lots of people and knows people at the other end can be reassuring. So hopefully that wasn't too much of a sales pitch.
Thanks for that, Cameron. I think that's very valuable, and also like really important kind of checklist that you also shared in terms of making sure that who you do talk to is qualified and really working in the best interest for you. So that's, I think, one last question before we kind of segue into just a little bit of background about each of your organizations, which you've shared briefly, but it would be nice to see a little bit more. Accommodation. Now, this may be not on the top of the mind when you're kind of getting your grade offers, but it is an important one, right? Especially if you're going to go into clearing, how are you going to figure out where you're going to live, especially if it's a different city from where you expect it to be? Any thoughts on that, Jonathan?
So this is something that really is different across different universities, across different parts of the UK. I'm on a Facebook group which is called What I Wish I Knew Before I Went to University, which basically is about 80,000 parents who are on this Facebook group, all with their kids, and they're wondering like what's going to happen to their kids for accommodation and this and that and the other. And so you get quite a lot of insight into different cities, different universities, what the accommodation scenario is. I think it's quite an important thing when you're applying through clearing to really know, because it can be a major stress factor. If you're going to university where they don't have their own accommodation, where they don't have things available, then that can be pretty difficult. And particularly in London, you'll be aware, you've lived in London, you live in London, and as a student, it can be quite challenging. So, the university should make it pretty clear whether they have an accommodation guarantee, whether it holds, what type of accommodation is available, and what the process is for that. But it is variable. There's no one size fits all here.
Absolutely.
The only thing I'd add is once you know where you're going, get onto accommodation as soon as you can. Don't leave it for a few days.
That makes a lot of sense. I think, Jonathan, maybe if you can re-upload those slides or bring that up again, that'll be great, because we can then have a little bit of a look into what both of your organizations do and how others can reach out, because one of our listeners is also keen to have a link to the work that you guys do. So let me bring that up again, and maybe pass to you first, Jonathan, and then maybe back to you, Cameron.
Cool. So I think we want to go through. Here we are. Yes, so better uni choices. As I mentioned at the start, I worked in universities. I then worked in education technology. That was with Unibuddy that I've mentioned. I was then fortunate enough that my wife got a rather lovely job across in Bangkok, and I went to live there for 4 years. And while I couldn't work formally, what I could do was keep myself involved in the sector and do something that I really hope is useful. And so I built Better Uni Choices. It's a weekly newsletter, not through the holidays, but through term time, weekly newsletter.
Bad time on that one.
So Jonathan,
I'm sure Jonathan will join in a couple minutes. But maybe I can pass to you then, Cameron.
Okay, I'll sort of. So One Education is an education consultancy. We're our head offices, or our main offices in Chitlom in Bangkok. We work with a number of international schools in and around Bangkok or in other parts of Thailand. We have 10 qualified counsellors who are available to help with questions, queries, accommodation booking, visa queries, any issues you've got around going to study and the clearing process in particular. We're available. You can call us, you can visit us, and we offer a free service to try and help. I'm more than happy to help. One thing I should have said on the previous question as well is that actually, if you're in, I talked about managing parents earlier, an education counsellor might be able to have a conversation, help you have a conversation with mum and dad as well. That's another thought that I should have said. Sorry, carry on, Jonathan.
I feel like the internet is telling me to stop rambling. So one Better Uni Choices, it's a website you can go to for what I hope is all sorts of useful information. Some of it straightforward, some of it perhaps a little bit challenging, to challenge the way you think. And hopefully on occasion it'll give you some inspiration. There's also some really practical stuff about writing your personal statement. Now that may be something you've already done, but if you've got friends in the year below who are about to write their personal statement, there's a very simple, clear, free guide that you can download. There's also an online course that you can go to, hosted on another platform that you can use to help you as well.
Fantastic. That brings us to the end of our webinar. I just want to say a big thank you to both of you for taking time and for really thoughtfully guiding us through this interesting, sometimes stressful, sometimes exciting time of the year. Again, I think the kind of for me, what I'm taking away with it is the importance of preparing well, for staying calm and collected during this stage, knowing that things will work out for the best, but it's about taking those decisions in the most logical and practical way, making sure that you're communicating and have access to your mentors, your advisors, your parents around you, especially around those hours, and being confident enough to pick up a phone and have a call. I know that's not always easy, but it's important. It's an important skill to develop, definitely at this time of year. We're very grateful for your time. Links are shared below about your organization so people can reach out and connect. We'll also be sharing a little bit of a kind of a recap to those of you who signed up through ZNotes. So feel free to watch parts of the video, get a little bit more about the organizations that we work with, and also refer to the various guides that we have on znotes.org/uniguide, so we can benefit from all this selection and application process as well. Anyway, thank you everyone, and have a good rest of the day. Thanks, Jonathan and Cameron, for your time and insights.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.